My boyfriend and my best friend might not have cheated, but I can't shake what I learned about myself. I knew something was wrong the moment I saw the group chat explode with notifications because my phone was buzzing so hard it rattled against my desk and made my coworker look over like I was hiding a swarm of bees in my drawer, and I wish I had just ignored it and kept working on the stupid quarterly report, but of course I didn't because I have the self-control of a toddler in a candy aisle, so I flipped my phone over and saw my name in the middle of a screenshot someone had dropped into the chat, and it took me a second to even understand what I was looking at because it was a Venmo transaction from my boyfriend Mark to my best friend Tessa with the note for last night winking face and a timestamp of 1:07 a.m. and an amount of $38.25, which somehow made it worse because it was such a weirdly specific number and my stomach dropped so fast I genuinely thought I might throw up on my keyboard. Mark and I have been together for almost 4 years, and we live together in a small but cute apartment in Houston where he alphabetizes the spices and folds towels like he's auditioning for a hotel commercial, and he's the kind of guy who sets reminders for dentist appointments 6 months in advance and never forgets to take out the trash, and I always thought that meant he was stable and reliable and safe, and maybe that sounds boring, but after the chaos of my early 20s I wanted boring. I wanted someone who didn't make me cry in parking lots or disappear for 3 days because they needed space, and Mark was that person and I loved him for it. And then there's Tessa, who is basically a human glitter bomb in the best and worst ways because she's loud and hilarious and impulsive, and she's the reason I once dyed my hair purple at 2 a.m. and then cried about it at 10 a.m. and she helped me fix it and bought me tacos and told me I looked like a sexy grape, and we've been best friends since college, and she's always been the person I call when I need to scream or laugh or both. The three of us have hung out a million times, and I always thought they liked each other in that friendly my best friend's partner way, but never anything more, and I never saw anything weird between them, and maybe that's why the Venmo thing hit me so hard, because it felt like the universe tapping me on the shoulder and whispering that I wasn't as secure as I pretended to be, and I hated that feeling because it made me feel like I was back in my early 20s again, waiting for the other shoe to drop and bracing myself for disappointment even when nothing had actually happened yet. I texted Mark immediately asking what the hell the transaction was about and why he was sending Tessa money at 1 in the morning with a flirty emoji, and he didn't answer, and then I called him and it went straight to voicemail, and then I called Tessa and hers did too, and I sat in the bathroom stall staring at the beige metal door like it might give me answers, and I felt this horrible mix of panic and anger and embarrassment because what if everyone in the group chat thought my boyfriend and best friend were hooking up behind my back, and what if they were right, and what if I was the idiot who never saw it coming? Mark finally called me back around 3 and he sounded normal, like he had no idea my entire world had been melting down for the past 2 hours, and when I asked him about the Venmo he sighed and said oh that, like I had asked him why he left a dish in the sink, and he told me he had gone out for drinks with some coworkers after work and Tessa had shown up because she was already in the area, and they ended up talking for a while and she didn't have money on her, so he covered her Uber home and she paid him back, and the emoji was a joke because she had been teasing him about how he always refuses to let people pay him back, and I wanted to believe him, I really did, but something about the way he said it felt too casual, like he had rehearsed it, or maybe I was just spiraling because I asked him why he didn't tell me he was out with her, and he said he didn't think it mattered because it wasn't planned and they only talked for like an hour, and he didn't want to bother me because he knew I had an early meeting, and I said you could have still told me, and he said I'm sorry, I didn't think it was a big deal, and I didn't know what to say because technically he wasn't wrong, but also technically I felt like I had been punched in the chest. Tessa called me later and her explanation matched his almost word for word, which should have made me feel better but somehow made me feel worse because it felt coordinated, even though I know that's probably unfair, and she said she was sorry for the emoji and she didn't mean anything by it, and she thought it was funny and she didn't realize it would show up on people's feeds, and she sounded genuinely horrified that it had caused drama, but there was this tiny voice in my head whispering that they were lying, and I hated that voice because I didn't want to be the jealous, insecure girlfriend who accuses people of cheating over a stupid emoji, and I didn't want to be the kind of person who second-guessed every interaction between the people she loved. For the next few days everything felt slightly off, like the air in the apartment was heavier, and Mark kept asking if I was okay, and I kept saying I was fine in that tone that means I was absolutely not fine, but didn't know how to talk about it without sounding unhinged, and we would sit on the couch watching TV, but I felt like there was a glass wall between us, and every time his phone buzzed my stomach clenched, even though I knew it was probably just work or his brother sending memes, and I hated that I was reacting that way because it made me feel like some paranoid version of myself I didn't recognize. I kept replaying the Venmo thing in my head like a movie I couldn't stop watching, and every time I thought I had calmed down something would remind me of it and the anxiety would flare up again, and I felt ridiculous because it was just an emoji and a weirdly specific amount of money, but it had cracked something open in me that I didn't know how to close again. The twist came a week later when I met up with another friend from college named Lila, who is one of those people who always knows everything about everyone without even trying, and she asked how things were with Mark, and I hesitated and she raised an eyebrow and said, "Oh God, what happened?" And I told her about the Venmo thing and she made a face and said it was weird but she didn't think they were hooking up, and when I asked why she was so sure she said it was because Tessa had been talking to someone else for months, and I just stared at her because this was news to me, and she said Tessa had met some guy at her gym and had been all flustered about it but didn't want to tell me yet because she wasn't sure if it was serious, and I felt this weird mix of relief and betrayal because on one hand it meant she probably wasn't sleeping with Mark, but on the other hand she had been hiding something from me and I didn't know why, and it made me wonder what else she wasn't telling me. I confronted Tessa about it later and she admitted it was true, and she said she didn't tell me because she didn't want to jinx it and she knew I had been stressed with work and she didn't want to dump more drama on me, and I said I was her best friend and she could tell me anything, and she said she knew and she was sorry and she just wanted to figure it out first, and I believed her, but I also felt this sting because I realized I wasn't her first call anymore, and maybe I hadn't been for a while. And that hurt in a way I didn't expect because it made me feel like I had been slowly drifting away from the people I cared about without even noticing. The real gut punch came a few nights later when Mark and I finally had a long overdue conversation, and he told me he felt like he had been walking on eggshells around me for months because I had been distant and snappy and he didn't know why, and he thought maybe I wasn't happy with him anymore, and I just sat there staring at him because I didn't even realize I had been acting that way, and hearing him say it out loud made something twist in my chest because it forced me to confront the possibility that I had been so wrapped up in my own stress and insecurities that I hadn't noticed the effect it was having on the person I loved. He said he felt like I didn't trust him, and that hurt because I always thought of myself as a trusting person, but maybe I wasn't, or maybe I used to be, and somewhere along the way I stopped and I didn't even notice, and he wasn't accusing me or angry, he just sounded tired in a way that made me feel like I had let him down without meaning to. We talked for hours and it wasn't a dramatic breakup or a screaming match, it was just two tired people trying to figure out when things had shifted and why neither of us said anything, and we didn't break up but we also didn't magically fix everything, and we agreed to try therapy and better communication and all the responsible adult things you're supposed to do, but when I went to bed that night I stared at the ceiling and realized the thing that scared me the most wasn't the idea of Mark cheating or Tessa lying, it was the realization that I didn't like the version of myself I had become, because somewhere along the way I turned into someone who jumps to the worst conclusions and bottles things up and waits for people to disappoint her, and I don't know when that happened or how to undo it, but I want to try because I don't want to be the villain in my own life, and I don't want to lose the people I love because I'm too scared to be honest about what I'm feeling. And I guess that's why I'm writing all of this, because I don't know if I'm the asshole for how I reacted, or if the Venmo thing really was as innocent as they say, or if my insecurities are poisoning my relationships, or if this is just what happens when you've been hurt before and you think you've healed, but then something small cracks the surface and suddenly everything comes pouring out and you realize you've been holding your breath for years and you don't know how to exhale without everything collapsing. I don't know if I'm looking for advice or validation or just a place to put all these feelings, but if you've read this far, thank you, and if you have thoughts, I'm listening because I really don't want to be this person anymore and I'm trying to figure out how to fix it before it's too late. I keep thinking about how strange it is that something as small as a Venmo notification could unravel so much inside me, and how maybe it wasn't really about the emoji or the money or even Mark and Tessa, but about the way I've been carrying around old fears like they're part of my personality instead of wounds I never actually dealt with, and I hate admitting that because it makes me feel weak or dramatic or like I'm blaming my past for my present. But maybe acknowledging it is the only way to stop it from controlling me. I've been telling myself for years that I'm fine, that I'm over everything that happened before Mark, that I'm stable and secure and emotionally mature, but the truth is I've been coasting on the idea of healing without doing the work, and the Venmo thing was just the first crack big enough for everything underneath to spill out and force me to look at it. I don't know what's going to happen next with Mark or with Tessa or even with myself, but I know I don't want to keep living in this half-anxious, half-numb state where I'm waiting for people to disappoint me before they even get the chance to show me they won't, and I don't want to keep pretending I'm okay when I'm not, because all that does is push people away and make me feel even more alone. I want to learn how to communicate before things boil over, and how to trust without constantly scanning for danger, and how to be honest about what I'm feeling without worrying that it makes me too much or too needy or too sensitive, and I know that's not something that changes overnight, but I want to try because the alternative is becoming someone I don't recognize and someone I don't want to be. So maybe the Venmo thing wasn't a betrayal or a sign or a warning, maybe it was just a stupid misunderstanding that happened to hit me in the exact spot where I'm still fragile, and maybe that's embarrassing, but maybe it's also a chance to finally deal with the things I've been avoiding and to stop pretending I'm unaffected by things that actually hurt me. And maybe that's the real point of all of this, not whether Mark and Tessa did anything wrong, but whether I'm willing to face the parts of myself I've been ignoring and actually do the work to become someone who doesn't crumble at the first sign of uncertainty. I don't know if that makes me the asshole or just human, but I'm trying to figure it out, and I guess that's all I can do right now.